So why don't we start? So at 6:01, we call the meeting to order of the Master Plan Steering Committee. And I'll just take attendance so we have a record. Dean?
Aye.
And we know Ashley's not able to join us. Carrie?
Here.
Andrew?
Here.
Janet?
Here.
John?
John, you're muted.
Here. And we know Jen will be a little late. Meg?
Here.
Glenn?
I am here.
And Mike?
I'm here.
And we know Donald may be late or not attending, I think you said, Pat.
You won't be able to make it.
Won't be able to make it, yeah. And then Katie?
Here.
And myself. So thank you all. So we want to start the meeting with giving everyone a chance to give a little more of their vision, and Daphne's going to coordinate this. She put together a list of questions. I hope you had a chance to look at them. I think they're very insightful. Give us all a chance to really say what we think about the process, how it's going, and what our vision is. So we want to thank Daphne for leading us in that. So I will hand it over to Daphne.
Thanks, Phil. Good evening, everyone. Snowing again. Thought spring was here, but
It's very pretty nice though this afternoon.
it is pretty. It is pretty
Yeah.
as long as you're indoors, yeah.
Yeah.
So, as Phil said, we thought we'd, give this opportunity for all of you to share your thoughts about what a master plan is, its purpose, what you hope to that this process achieves. So we thought we'd go ask the question one by one and go around the room, or the Zoom box, if you will, and ask each of you to respond. If you haven't had a chance to review the questions, what you could do is say, I pass this, and then I'll come back to you, because I don't want to put anyone on the spot who hasn't had a chance to think about it. So I'm going to go in order that...
Recording in progress.
That was just for me.
I'm sorry, Pat?
He's recording it.
That was just for me. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm going to go in the order that I see on my screen, so that we don't miss anyone. So I'm going to start, actually, with you, Pat. What do you hope this master plan achieves?
Well, ultimately, master plan is setting our goals for future growth within the town of Walpole. So, obviously the last plan being done in 2004, a lot of great things were able to be implemented that are part of that plan, and part of those action items that were discussed. So, as in before and with many other towns, this is a great opportunity to kind of evaluate, where we are in the world, where we are with the town itself, and to kind of, put pen to paper and think about how we want this community to grow within the next 10 to 20 years. Some of that's unpredictable, but some of that is, as you kind of see from the previous plan as well, a lot of the items that we discussed and were goals that were brought up during our goal and our vision public response portion this fall, a lot of that is kind of the same. So a lot of that identity of the town is still kind of true today, and that those same needs, those same goals, that same idea of what makes Walpole great, and those things that people really emphasize, they still are, things that we want to bring forward and take with us in the next 10 or 20 years. But there's also new items and new things that come up that as society changes, we want to be able to reevaluate to make sure we're growing at a sustainable and constructive way. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And what about you, Mike? What do you hope this master plan achieves?
Well, I think a lot of what Patrick had just said, but I would like to see that the plan really includes all the kind of critical elements that that belong in a master plan for a town or a municipality, and that it addresses what the town wants to see over the long term.
Thank you. And what about you, Phil?
So in addition to what was already said, I think I would like to see a plan that has both short and long-term recommendations that also some are bold, that may be stretching beyond what maybe people often think about. So we go a little beyond what, and maybe be a little more inventive. I think we need to have I think the plan should support the input that we've gotten from the public forums to make sure that we're really responding to that. And I hope it creates a plan that captures the interest and inspires our community, so that people really get behind it, that they see this as really something that we can do, that is really going to be the next step for Walpole and the growth.
Thank you. And what about you, Glenn?
And so I agree with Phil, Mike, and Pat. You guys all made some really good points. It is a comprehensive look at where we are, where we're going. I think we all bring a different breadth of expertise, and we all have sort of different reasons for being here. So for me, I think it's all important, right? I think we want to look at housing and economic development, natural resources. I personally think there's some overriding concerns that we want to make sure we address, so that we have a plan for the next 10 to 15 years. And I think zoning is one of them. Excuse me, because how we regulate land use of specific blocks of land and even individual lots within a specific block, regarding lot size, density, height, and so on. These allowances are prohibitions, so what will determine what people see when they drive through town, and it'll be a determining factor in whether people stop or they keep on driving by. Whether they want to come here to work and live, or whether they want to find another place to do that. So I think we need to shape sort of what our future is in the sense of zoning. And I'm also particularly interested in open space and recreation, and how we incorporate our recently updated OSRP. So we have a really good open space and recreation plan. So we've talked about it, but I want to make sure that gets incorporated. There's some really good recommendations and goals and visions that we're going to come up with. It's also that are going to overlap with the open space plan. And I just think it's a really important component to who we are in Walpole. We've done a really good job with open space, and we've also missed some opportunities over the years. So I want to sort of make sure that we learn from our past successes and our past mistakes in that area. So there's a lot more that's important, but those are two areas that I wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Glenn. And what about you, John? What do you hope the master plan achieves?
I hope the master plan achieves common sense, which is probably unlikely to happen.
Why do you say it's unlikely to happen?
My biggest concern about the master plan is people looking to what I would call Franklinization of Walpole. The town Franklin is a classic
I'm sorry, John.
example
The concerns is a different question that's coming up. But now
Well,
I'd like
okay,
to.
what I would hope, I just said common sense. I think that since I've been involved in town government so long, I have been involved with and observed the evolution of the community. And I believe we are at a stage of post-need satisfaction. We have just completed 6 or 7 monumental, the new school will be the 7th monumental new project to reshape the town at a tremendous investment. And I think it's time for a pause and a chance to learn how to use all these new amenities and all these new resources, and to avail ourselves of all these new services, instead of marching off to build and develop every other square inch of town that's left. And I fear that, the Franklin, you're right, that's an answer to a different question, but I would like to see common sense and balance it's interesting that people crow about making Walpole affordable and having affordable housing are the ones that want to spend the most money and make the town most unaffordable. It's actually counterintuitive. The people that want to regulate the most and structure the most and overzone the most and whatever are actually the people who are making the town unaffordable for the folks that, you know, have lived here, developed the town, have really made it what it is today.
So common sense and balance. Thank you.
Common sense and some sense of balance. We don't have to, the whole town doesn't have to be developed next year. It doesn't have to be developed for 50 years. It's been at a very, you know, and a lot of these younger people don't understand. This town from 1970 to now has grown less than 1% a year. It's been a very natural evolution and growth. It's been nothing like other communities have experienced, and it could continue to be that way. But there's certain people who just because they're on planning boards or committees or commissions or whatever, they want to fill it all in now and make, you know, build it out and define it all and put it all in a box.
So you
And I
also
think-
wanted to achieve a certain pace of development.
Well, yeah, there's a natural evolution that we can't predict. I mean, 5 years from now, there may be a totally different type of need for land use and a totally different attitude about everything. And people think
So the
you can take the
pace.
history and project it to the future is,
Thank you, John. I'm aware that Carrie has to go to another meeting, so I just want
Go
to
ahead.
make sure she has a chance. So Carrie, what do you hope this master plan achieves?
Thanks, Daphne. I think the phrase that keeps rolling around my head is a more perfect union, that phrase from the preamble to the Constitution. So what I hope that our master plan achieves is moving us toward a more perfect Walpole. We all acknowledge that there are so many things here already that are wonderful. And so I hope that our master plan celebrates and formally acknowledges all that is already great about our community, but also is frank about what the challenges are that are facing us, and also is aspirational in its vision for how we're going to confront the challenges of the future, understanding that some of those are unpredictable and some of those are actually very clear, and that are things we need to keep head on.
Thank you. And what about you, Janet?
Listening, everybody's ideas are things that I'd like to see achieved too, but I think one of the things, the major concerns that were listed by the community had to do with keeping the small community feel. And I think that is something that we ought to definitely consider. When I look through the old master plan, a lot of their goals and aspirations are the same that I think probably the majority of people in Walpole are still concerned about. They achieved quite a bit, which was nice. And I think our plans for the master plan should include things that were not maybe met, but are still germane to the common good. So I think that's important, as well as making sure that the main concerns of the people, we haven't really to look at all the findings. I think that'll be very interesting when we can see that and break it down and then put our thoughts down. So that's important to take a look at.
Thank you, Janet. And what about you, Dean?
We gonna go through and ask all of the questions from your prompt, or is it just in
Yes.
general?
All of the questions.
Okay, so this would just be the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote them down, so I'm going to read them. So they're very concise, but I hope the plan calls for attention to areas of Walpole that the constituents value, and areas where Walpole can grow to be a modern, attractive town. So I just, what I'm thinking of the vision for the plan is to capture what the constituents that were polled, what they feel the town has, and that the master plan describes how the town wants to move. That's about it.
Thank you. Andrew?
Hi, thanks for hosting this. What do I hope the master plan achieves? In one sentence, I hope we propose a set of concrete ideas that are long-term strategic actions grounded in evidence. And the reason for this answer of thinking long-term is that the town meeting style government, which I love, inherently lacks a strong actor, right? We don't have a mayoral system. That's by design. I like it. We don't have a city council. That's by design. And so the town meeting style government lacks a strong actor. And while there's many benefits to this form of government, it does risk a presentism bias, meaning like a short-term thinking. And I think the master plan is a great antidote to that. It allows us to have a set of concrete long-term actions that are grounded in evidence. That's what I hope we achieve. And so the 5 areas I hope that we address, 2 of them are maintaining assets or maintaining assets for Walpole, and 3 are improving. So the 2 that we see in the surveys consistently come up that people love about Walpole that I hope the master plan maintains are natural resources, number 1, and number 2, the strong schools. So the master plan should hopefully maintain those 2. The 3 areas where I felt that the surveys were very clear we needed some improvement are, number 1, downtown revitalization, number 2, more housing choices, and number 3, to either lower taxes or lower the growth of increase in taxes. So that's what I hope we achieve.
Thank you. And what about you, Katie? I was about to mistaken you.
Call me Sabrina.
Yes.
Thank you. So I think everyone hit on good points, and being near the end, I'm not going to repeat them all. I think my hope is that it really represents the community as a whole. I've voiced it before, so I won't beat it to death, but I don't think it should represent what we want so much as what the town as a majority wants, and that's what I hope happens.
Thank you. And what about you, Meg? Meg, are you to hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. I want to echo some of the things that Andrew said about making sure that we have very concrete recommendations, not, something that people can hang their hats on and identify and move forward with. And I hope that it's strong and complete, something that people get excited about.
Thank you. Christopher? You may also be on mute. Apparently that's going to remain with us way past this COVID. It's going to be a new phrase we use. You're on mute.
Yeah, Christopher. Patrick.
I think Christopher might be with the Norwood Media.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
just recording.
So, Stephen?
I'm just here with Pat also. I'm here with Pat. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for clarifying. So then let's go to the next question. What do you think is the purpose of a master plan? And now let's go the other way. Meg.
The purpose of our master plan, I think it's
any master plan.
Oh, any master plan. Well, that's just it's a map that gives you the direction as to how to go forward.
Very good. Katie.
So I think it's our guide for the future. It's to give us direction and help us prioritize what to focus on and how to achieve it. I think we all know we do this because it is Mass State Law, it's Section 81D. But I think it's a good thing to have because it gives us a focus and it lets us know what the people want and, helps us prioritize what to move forward with.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yes. What do I think is the purpose of a master plan? 2 big elements to answer this question. One is broad input from the community, which I think we've done a really great job of, and will continue to with our next public community forum and with surveys and such. The second important element in terms of the purpose of a master plan, I believe, is to think big, right? Again, I go back to my point earlier about not having a short-term bias. And so, for example, there are long-term trends that affect the town of Walpole. Things like changing demographics, an aging population, for example, or the shift in the workforce or industry mix in terms of employment opportunities. Right, the labor market around the Boston metro area is changing away from a kind of industry-based economy towards more of a service-based economy, and frankly, a high-tech economy. So thinking about these long-term trends, another one is climate change. So I think, again, the purpose of a master plan is to think big over a long-term horizon.
Thank you. And Dean?
I think the purpose of the master plan is to assess areas of growth and areas to evolve as a town to achieve constituents' goals as a census.
Thank you. Janet?
Okay, most everybody has said what I automatically thought, but I think part of it is to actually survey what our current population is interested in, find out what they truly want, which is what we've attempted to do, and then to use our ability to guide the town into its future and make sure there are priorities taken into account so that we can use our common sense, as John says, to get where we hope to get. That's about it.
Thank you. Carrie?
I'm in agreement with just about everything that's been said so far. So to move the conversation along, I'm just going to pass to the next person.
Thanks for that efficiency. John? You're on mute, John. You're still on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Sorry about that. I was clicking the wrong button.
Oh, it happens to the best of us.
Story of my life. What do you think the purpose is? Well, Section 81D, the purpose is obviously more government intrusion, big government growth, and government control of the community, which I'm opposed to all three of those. I think that's the biggest crisis we have if you look at the national scene today, and I think this is just a microcosm in Walpole of what's happening everywhere else. And,
so can we back up for a moment? I want to understand what you mean. So the purpose of a master plan is more government control?
You heard Katie say that this is a requirement of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's a government entity.
It's a requirement
They're requiring
that the municipal government reach out to its...
They're requiring us as a government entity, as another government entity, to give them a plan, and they have a template, which you're well aware of, and I think the template of objectives and stuff that you produced are probably could be provided to 350 communities and towns around metropolitan Boston, which would all have the same. But the point is, the state government wants to define, compartmentalize, and control the planning of the future of the communities around it. And so that I think that's the purpose is government control.
Make a comment about that? So
Sure.
the state government doesn't actually require it. The state government encourages each community to reach out to its constituents and ask them what is it that they would like from their municipal government. Having a master plan, while not required, is beneficial to you because it makes you more eligible for grants. It makes you more predictable to people moving in, to people wanting to make an investment. So it's more about you're taking control of your future than about any government taking control.
I'd like to flip it to you then, Daphne. I mean, I don't know what you think the purpose of the master plan is, but quite frankly, I'll tell you what I think what I really think it is that we need, and I would ask you, we need to have a master plan for people to go to another tax system, which is called the Community Preservation Act, and which will wind up at a 5% tax on all the homes that get sold in Walpole, being funneled back to government. It's another tax grab by government.
Well, that has to
And
be.
I think that to do that, we have to have a master plan. So I think that's one of the reasons we're doing a master plan, to set the table for a government tax program.
So Pat would like to respond to
I was
that.
just going to say, John, as someone who works at your neighboring town for 3 years, they don't have a master plan, and they actually became a CPA community on their own. It's not, you don't need to have one to have the other.
You have to vote
But
on it.
I think that's part of the pathway that's defined in all the literature, is that you need a master plan and then you go to the
No,
next
you
step.
don't.
Well, I disagree with you.
I was part of it.
Yeah, well, I've been part of it for 50 years.
No, I'm saying I was part of a town that passed a CPA that did not have a master plan. It's not related.
And
Well, it is, because people, if we have a master plan, they can use the elements of the master plan to justify the tax increase under the Community Preservation Act.
Not related, John.
Well,
And I
actually, the
think
CPA is.
Walpole's very different than Norwood as well, Patrick. It's not a.
No,
good
I know.
one.
I'm just saying they're not related, John.
So people in Walpole aren't that predisposed to big government or to another tax system.
Okay.
So the CPA is a funding mechanism that can be used for affordable housing, open space and recreation, and historical preservation. And every community has to vote on whether or not they would like that as a funding mechanism. And you can vote also on the percentage. So
Well,
just-
yeah, but Daphne, we have to go down that path. But basically, your company was a consultant to the town of Walpole trying to do this particular inclusionary zoning for a number of years. And there's a number of people on this committee who were all advocates and are planners and are pushing a particular agenda in that direction, and that, could well be funded by the so-called new tax called the Community Preservation Act. So, I mean, the public, I know that, and I know more than I'm even saying right now, but you asked me, my general concern is more government control, more government intrusion, and more government control over the planning of the community, and there's a particular tax program involved. It could be in the future. May not be, but it could be.
So actually, John, I hadn't asked you what your concern was. I asked you what the purpose was, but we will get to concerns. Glenn, would you like to tell us what you think the purpose of the master plan is?
Sure, that's a great one to follow. So I do think we're here to serve the people. And so I do have to comment a little bit on what John said. So John essentially thinks the purpose is, there's no reason for us to have a master plan because there's more government control. But I think it's the opposite. It allows the government to relinquish control to the people. We hear back what they want from us, what they expect from us, and then we execute it. So let's get that vision. It's not our vision. It's not the government's vision. It's not the town hall's vision. It's the vision of the town of Walpole. So we're reaching out. We're doing a great job doing it so far. We're going to continue to reach out, get feedback. We're going to listen. We're going to create this vision, and we're going to, create some goals, and we're going to execute it. And if it's not going to be my goal, I have some ideas, but let's bring all the ideas to the table, and then let's execute. And pacing might be part of it, John. I mean, we might not want to move too fast, and that's fine. Let's put that in the master plan. But to suggest that having the master plan is a mechanism for control, I think it's the opposite. I think it's releasing control and then allowing the town to govern itself and the people. We represent the people, so let's reach out and hear what they have to say, and let's listen, and then let's put together a plan that represents who we are.
I don't object to the plan. I don't object to the plan.
You don't object to being part of the plan?
The planning process, I don't object to at all, Glenn.
You don't object to
We're talking about the purpose. We're talking about the purpose of the plan. She asked me
Okay, great. So let's create this plan, and the purpose is to create a good plan that represents who we are and where we're going, and then to create some goals and to actually execute it. I think the execution part is the part to me that's the most exciting. I don't have any preconceived notions about what that's going to entail, but when we get there, I think that'll be the fun part.
Thank you. And Phil, what do you see as the purpose of a master plan?
Yeah, and first I just want to encourage everyone to stay on the question, because we do have a time constraint. So and I know there are a lot of people have a lot of issues maybe, but we should really stay to the question and not get off track. That would help. And also I think we need to be careful not be too critical of things. I mean, there's a wide range of views on things. So so just be a little open to the fact that there are a wide range of views on things. I agree with what everyone else has said. I'll just add a couple of things. One is, it's a unique opportunity for us for doing this plan, because I think, as many people have alluded to, the fact that this is the place where we can set a plan that covers however many years. We don't know how long plans actually become pertinent, because things are changing. But it's our opportunity to do that, to have the physical growth plan for Walpole, to take into account all of these different issues that come together, whether it be transportation or housing, climate change or open space, and really give the town something that the town can use going forward to really make good decisions, and also to have a guidance for as the town makes policies and so forth. So I think it's very important to have this, and it's our opportunity to do this, taking the input from what we've heard from people, and it's our job partly to take that input and make it into actionable plans, actionable recommendations, and I think that's the big challenge. So I think it's really we're all very fortunate, I think, to be part of this process and have this opportunity to help make it work.
Thanks, Phil. And Mike?
Yeah, I'll start by being a little bit redundant. So it is a vision or a mapping exercise that's developed to help the town make decisions for their future. I think the plan is, it should have some longevity. So to Andrew's point, sorry, it's a little echoey. To Andrew's point, I think there's lots of things that we know today that are kind of low-hanging fruit that we want to see in the plan, but it's really important to have those trends and the forecasts in the plan as well, so that there isn't another group in 10 years sitting here and reinventing this and going down the same path. It should have some longevity so that we can accomplish things over a longer period of time. And I just, not that my opinion matters, but I think that this is a valuable exercise, this particular question, to help get the committee aligned with our goal and what we're planning to do going forward. But what a master plan is really isn't up for interpretation. It is what it is. That there's a definite definition around that, what it's supposed to be. How everybody interprets it and what it means to you and what you have feelings on, that plays into how we execute. But certainly we all know what a master plan is, and it's that vision and how we get from A to Z. We're gonna maybe have different views on, but we'll get there, and that's what makes this exercise so important.
Thank you.
So important.
Pat?
Yeah, everyone did a great job of explaining it. But yeah, it's a comprehensive plan for the town's vision and growth.
Thank you. So, as far as you're concerned, what would make this master plan a success? Bill?
First of all, creating a plan that really supports the vision and the goals that we've heard from the community, and including a range of short-term and long-term recommendations that are practical, that are significant, and that also some are actually more, bold. We don't want to just be always rehashing the same things. I think we should be thinking about how we can really grow and and support that vision, and maybe in ways that we haven't thought of before. Second, I think we to get the support of the town boards, it will be a success if we have a plan that the community supports and the town boards, the select board, so forth, support. Obviously, the planning board, which is the first board that has to approve it, even though approval is not required by any of the other boards. But if the plan is to go anywhere, it has to have the support of the community. So I think that's another part of it. And then I think we need to build excitement around the plan. So it can't just be a document that's sitting there. And I think that's one of the things that we can do to show how this really brings Walpole forward. And the short-term plans are very important because we want to have concrete things that can happen very quickly, and then have that balance with long-term things, and then have those support, as I said, the different goals. And we can go. I'll leave my other comments for other questions.
Thank you, Janet.
I think part of our part of my hope is that this is a viable plan, that it's actually going to be able to continue on. And are the ideas that we're coming up with going to be sustainable? Are we going to be able to enable our town to move forward in a positive way on these ideas? So that's probably where I'd say my most concern is. And did we reach as many people as we had intended to? Did we miss any big points? But
so the question is, what would make it a success? It would be successful if we reach
right
on the points of view that,
and if what we decide is actually viable
and sustainable.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Meg, what about you? What would make this plan a success for you? Oh, I'm sorry, you're mute. What day do we
it will be successful if it's clear, direct, actionable, easy to comprehend, and if it's actually followed and not ignored.
Thank you. Katie.
So I think clear goals, how to achieve them, and community support behind it.
Thank you. Carrie.
I think the master plan will be a success if everyone who provided input into the process can read through it and see some of what they contributed reflected in the plan. That doesn't mean that they're going to agree with everything that's in there, but that they can read it and know that their perspective was valued and taken into consideration and is reflected in there. And also, I think for people to read through and to have an understanding of what the vision is for the next several years and feel like that is a community that they want to be part of and that they might actually have some excitement around helping to achieve some of what's in that vision. I think a lot of the feedback that we've gotten from the community has had to do with removing barriers to inclusion within Walpole. So whether it's improving the sidewalks or, diversifying the housing stock or making downtown a really commerce friendly and consumer friendly place. Everyone wants to feel like there's space for them in Walpole. And I think that the plan will be a success if people get that sense that that's what we're moving towards. And I agree very much with what Philip said about having some bold action items. I think the plan should present a challenge to the community when we look at it. It should be aspirational, like I said before, and should give us something to strive for in a very clear framework.
Thank you. Mike, what would make this plan a success for you?
Hi. So I think someone brought up the Massachusetts general law around master plans, and I lists out all the major components that should be in a plan, and I think we've identified all of those. The economic development, the open space, and the recreation, and just to echo on everybody that made this point, I think that we know the stuff that we know and the obvious things that should be included in the plan, and those have been coming from the public in a resounding voice, right? But there's those things that we have to dig deeper into and make sure that we identify those things that are going to make Walpole special to so many people, and build in those inclusive things and make sure there's an opportunity for everybody. So look at it through a Walpole centric lens, and it's not an exercise of fix your buildings, fix your roads, that kind of thing. The other piece is that I'm on this committee to help take all the feedback from the community, but I have my own opinion, but I went into the survey like everybody else and filled it out and gave my feedback that way. This is really an exercise to get the feedback from the rest of the community and bring that stuff forward. So I think that's what will make this a positive thing, is if all those voices are heard and implemented down, at some point down the road.
Thanks, Mike. John.
Well, this
What
would make it a success is, I think, if we do have all the inputs included and considered, and we have a chance to review and define them. I'll give you an example just quickly. In the at the high school session, I had 10 ladies and a couple of gentlemen in my group. I think Patrick was assisting me at one point, and they didn't mention housing at all. They had many other issues about traffic and about the library and about senior center and senior housing, whatever. But they didn't really. A lady, funny, I guess it was that, she says, being inclusive would be important too. And they all said, oh, yeah, that's really important. And so I happened to ask her, so, well, what do you mean by inclusive? She says, well, more stores and more retail alternatives. So their understanding of inclusivity is totally different than somebody else's. It's the idea that, you know, there's semantics here, and there's how do you make things successful? I guess you get on the same page, but I mean the market is segmented. I'm a senior. I represent the conservative older people in town. The business people have a totally different view than most of the people on this committee. Okay, and I'm here by accident. By design, I would never be on this committee because no one wants to hear my dialogue or my story. But
you needs to be heard, John.
Well, I know, but Phil thinks I talk too much, so I try to cut myself back. So I would just tell you, for example, I mentioned 3 groups that I thought should have input in the kitchen conversation, and
so now that's going off the topic, though. So you're
okay.
Is that in order for the plan to be successful, we need to be sure that we're using this, that we're using the vocabulary. We want to be sure that we understand what people are saying.
Well, my point was 2 of my groups didn't report, primarily because of the process. They had negative things to say. They didn't want their names involved. They didn't want to be identified because they're business people in town. And but they had important observations. So I don't know exactly how to get that information in yet, to be honest with you.
Well, we can have a conversation about that offline. So thank you, John.
Sure.
What would make the plan a success for you? Plan, yes.
I didn't hear you. Broke up. Okay. So for the purposes of this question, let's just assume that we have a good document that has visions and goals, and that we do a good job on that. So assuming that the document itself is solid, follow through. I think that's the most important part. And there's going to be some competing interests in there. You could have, Andrew mentioned the tax burden earlier. Obviously, that's an important thing to consider, which means we can't just go have an override every couple of years. We can't just, up the debt budget to crazy levels. So we have to, look at our schools and make sure our infrastructure is solid. But we also have to have a good plan in place to do that. That's just an example. But just so follow through with competing interests and then execution. Yeah.
Thank you. Dean.
People have said it, and I'm going to, repeat a little bit, but a clear and concise representation of the town assets and a clear areas where the constituents as a census want to grow and evolve. And also, really important is, how the plan communicates that to the constituents and how it reaches the most constituents possible.
Thank you.
So, if everyone reads it, enter their information, and that's a small portion. I want to know, I'm concerned on how it reaches everybody.
Thank you. Andrew?
The 3 things I think that would make the master plan a success are: 1, that it reflects broad public participation; 2, that the recommendations are rooted in evidence-based analysis; and 3, that there's follow-through on the implementation steps. That's it.
Pat?
So, I think first of all, getting a plan that tries to get a wide variety of input and feedback from all elements of the town. I think that's something we've all kind of touched about, and so it's not something that is just looks into one group or someone that not just the people that respond, but the people that don't respond, and make sure we find action items that one, that it can be achieved and that they can benefit all areas, all segments of population, all areas of what we like about Walpole, and really kind of a diverse plan of goals and actions that we can take. And obviously, I think the element of any good plan is that you actually have to follow through on it. And so something that is achievable and that it's held accountable. I think a plan that sits on the shelf is awful. So something that we can actually go forward with and keep track of and make sure that we are looking into action items, getting them done, making progress on what all of you are doing here for this next year or so. All that effort is not all for nothing. We want to make sure we have a plan that can be accomplished, and we value the input that we've got from everybody so far and that we're going to get. So basically it.
Thank you. So I have to say, I know we're not finished yet, but I just can't contain myself. I am so impressed with your answers. I've talked to a lot of master plan steering committees, and I'm really impressed with your answers. I just had to tell you. Couldn't wait till the end. So
Thank you.
yeah, really. So Meg, what concerns, if any, do you have about the process or the content of the plan? You're on mute again, Meg.
Yeah, really not much. Only if we end up with something that's sort of watered down. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Janet?
Okay, one of the concerns I have is, did we actually include everything that should be part of our future vision? Did we hit on areas that maybe younger people would be interested in and yet not verbalizing? And just looking back at where we've come from, I think it's important that we have a vision. And I'm concerned that, at least I'm hopeful, that we have reached the people in the town that will be here to enjoy the master plan.
Thank you. Phil, do you have any concerns about the process or the content of the plan?
First of all, making sure we really can reach out to all segments of the community. I think we've done a good job in the information gathering, or the input gathering. But with COVID-19, I think we've been a little bit challenged. And I think we need to look how we can continue to reach out to more people. And I think the second thing I would say would be creating a plan that does address the vision that we're coming up with, making sure that vision reflects what we've been hearing, and having a plan that is actionable and that we can really get out there and see the town follow through with it.
Thank you. Dean.
Yeah, you guys already touched on what I had mentioned, concerns. Concern that not all populations are represented in our census and the information we provided. And that's about it. Yep.
Thank you. Glenn, any concerns?
No, I don't have any concerns. I'm very positive and optimistic, and I like where we're going. I'm glad we have professional help. I'm glad that you and your firm are here, Daphne. I like everybody who's in this room. I think if 3 of us decided to run this thing off the rails, then the other 11 of us would put it back right back on. So I think we're going in the right direction. I think we're gonna end up pretty good with a pretty good plan.
Thank you. Pat, any concerns?
No, I just making sure we do our best to really cover and get feedback from a wide variety of people that live in the town. I mean, that's easier said than done, but as long as we kind of make the best effort to do that and make sure we factor in the people that may not have responded, but factor in some of those concerns and how we develop the plan. That's the one thing I hope we make sure we get as much impact and as much feedback as we can.
Thank you. John.
I think
These are concerns now.
Right. Well, structurally, as far as the process, I again, being a senior, I think there's too much was predefined, particularly with the structure, the way the answers, the way the documentation of the data and so forth was. It was somewhat inhibitive of certain people to be involved or to respond honestly or to give true answers. And the tight timetable really concerned me because I was trying to motivate people who were hesitant to participate but that should. We had 2 snowstorms sandwiched around your 11-day window or whatever it was, and it didn't allow me to spend the amount of effort needed to get them, to capture them, to get their observations, which I thought was critically important. And I don't know where this fits in, but I mean, there's a real component about town government and concerns about town government and dissatisfaction about town government that just isn't here, and it's out there, and it's not a small group of concern, but I think it needs to be exposed for what it is, and it needs to be considered because people are contrary. And this is great to have a dreaming session of all the things you'd like to build and have in Walpole, but economically, it's just the opposite of the themes that people are talking about, inclusionary and diversity and all this. It's just the opposite because we're driving people out of town whose families have been here for centuries, and it's because of the tax rate and because of the big government. And they have a number of opinions. I give one letter from one of the gentlemen agreed to have his name, and I gave the letter. It was also an article in the Walpole newspaper.
The letter to the
I
editor.
gave it to Patrick, but there are at least a dozen people who wanted to say something, but they didn't want to have their name tied to it. These people have been town meeting members. They've been involved for 15 years, and I'd love to get their input documented, but the way the system structured, I'm not blaming you, just the way this process was structured, I couldn't get their input in. I'm frustrated about that.
So, John, I appreciate your frustration, and I just wanted to point out that usually town governance is not included in the scope of a master plan, but since you feel it to be kind of a critical in the minds of some people, we could make a note of it just to be sure to document it.
Yeah, I mean, people are
it represents
concerned about time limits. Time limits for town officials, how many years they should be allowed to stay in the same position, about the structure of town meeting, about how many town employees should be in the. Yeah,
we can talk about that another time. Now we're just talking about the concerns because we just need to give everyone a chance.
Right.
So, but thank you.
Yep.
Andrew, any
Sure.
concerns?
I have a concern that we're going to frame these issues as problems instead of opportunities. It's not about problems, it's about opportunities, because I'm like Glenn. I think Walpole's a great town. I'm optimistic that everyone on this committee, that we can come up with a plan that we may not agree with every part of it, but it'll be reflective of broad public participation, and we'll be able to move the town forward by having it optimistically framed as opportunity. So for example, downtown revitalization. I don't want us to frame this as dreary and, oh gosh, downtown is, vacant storefronts and not enough business activity. I think it's an opportunity. So that's my first concern. My second concern is what Meg said, which is I don't want this to watered down, and I'm concerned it'll lack boldness. And again, this is about seizing the opportunity. I think we have a lot of potential. Walpole is already a great town, and we can make it even better. Third and final concern is that the master plan won't be implemented by other town bodies other than this steering committee, or I hope it gets approved by the planning board. I think, as Phil said, that's the first step. After this, the planning board is required to vote on this. So that's a concern. And otherwise, though, I think in terms of this group, I have no concerns with any of you, and I think we're going to create a good product.
Thank you. I like this positive energy. Katie.
So I think my concern is public perception and that we come across as legitimate. When the survey first came out, there was some hiccups, and I think because I am easily reachable, I had lots of people I don't even really know, who were concerned and voiced that. So instead of coming across with that negative perception, I want us to come across as, we've included everyone, we've heard everyone, we've included their thoughts, we haven't overlooked anyone, and that we're legitimate and fair. I myself had a concern as to, and I don't want to get into it too much, and I've already voiced it, but Judy hasn't had enough time to respond. I want to know how one person responding more than once, how do we address, when we look at the numbers and the responses, I want to know how we address that. Because I had a whole lot of people who told me for various reasons, nothing crooked, but many people responded to the survey many times. And so when we look at the results, if we're thinking each response is a different person, that's not 100% accurate. So that concerned me. And one of the legitimate reasons that some people did it was they were limited as to characters, and they had trouble responding in the number of characters that were allowed. So as a result, they would respond, and then they'd go in and respond again with different thoughts. There were people that
respond to that, because I think that's important to address. So when we, John, do you think you could put yourself on mute? I think we have some background noise, if you don't mind. So when we do a survey, we cannot limit who can respond, because many people have only one home computer. So if there are, say, 2 or 3 people who want from that device to respond, we have to let them, just as we do from a public computer. The senior center, the public library, it's the same, right? You don't know, maybe somebody does it twice there. Now, what's important is that we identify common themes, but also unique responses, right? We go through to see, is there something we haven't heard? Then we try to identify, are there any points of view that are missing, that you have heard that aren't represented there? And then if so, how can we reach out to that point of view and include it? And then lastly, the whole point of this survey, as well as other public input that we are receiving, is to feed the vision and goals. So you want to look critically at the vision and goals and make sure that you feel as a committee that it represents these points of view. And this is a working vision and goals. As we move forward and collect more input, and we'll ask the public to be responding to the vision and goals, we will adjust it accordingly. And it will then be the foundation. The plan will be developed around that vision and goals. So that's really where we need to look at, are all points of view represented? And is this where the town wants to go? The vision represents kind of an aspirational view of the future, and the goals start to break that aspirational view down into more bite-sized pieces that then we can develop objectives and action steps around. So that's where that all goes. It kind of we funnel the public input into that space. So I understand why you would be concerned if people were calling you and telling you they filled it out more than once, but I wouldn't yet be concerned that was skewing things, because we do count just to get a sense of frequency, but it is not only a quantifiable exercise, it's also a qualifying, and we try really hard to keep our ears open throughout the whole process. So if you could please do take a look and let us know if you feel that some points of view are missing. That would be important to know, and then we could decide how to proceed.
Okay. I don't want to monopolize the time because I know we're already an hour in, but I do have more questions about that. So I think we can address it later, because like I say, I don't want to, stop the meeting and monopolize it.
Thank you.
But I think I think that's a big, public perception is a huge success to this plan. You know, we can write it up, we can send it out there and have it look fantastic. But in order to achieve it, we need the public behind us. So I think that that's really important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meg, what concerns do you have, if any, about the process or the product? And may I suggest that you unmute? Yeah.
Didn't I already answer?
Concerns?
You did already.
Yeah, I did. I already.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I guess I've lost track now. Carrie?
Regarding process, I'll echo the concern about ensuring broad outreach and including as many voices as we can. And then on the back end, you know, making sure that it's moved forward once it leaves the hands of this committee and goes through the channels it needs to go through, making sure that it stays a living document after this portion of the process is done. And then with content, you know, when we talked about the draft vision and goals last meeting, I had talked about the fact that some of the priorities that have been voiced, that some of them seem like they would potentially compete with each other, or there might be tension between them. And I really would like to make sure that that we dive into those tensions and come up with some action steps rather than trying to gloss over them, because there's a lot to tease out. There's a lot of hard work that's going to have to be done to achieve balance, and I think the document really needs to acknowledge that and dive into that and make some solid recommendations about how we can do that, and not just kind of skate over the surface of those. And with that, I'm going to adjourn to my other meeting. So thank you all very much for the conversation this evening.
Thank you, Carrie, for joining. So Dean is also left, and so.
Yeah. So Mike, I believe you haven't given us your concerns.
I have not, but I guess I do. I want to echo my concern just around the end product being watered down, or us not reaching out to everybody that needs to be reached out to get their input. And those are just early concerns with the process. But I think it's too early to be critical of the actual content, because I feel like we've identified a lot of the buckets, and there's a lot of work yet to be done. With regard to the process, I think Katie actually reminded me of something that I wanted to bring up. So with regard to the timetable, we have a very aggressive timetable to kind of pull this stuff together. And I only was reminded of that because I was on some of the emails earlier when there was communication issues with the mirror boards and things weren't coming up correctly and people weren't able to do what they needed to do. And it just happens. There's mistakes. But I know that there was also a scheduling issue that I had to pull out and respond to and make sure that was addressed among the group. And then in the master plan visioning document, I was trying to reconcile the things from my list to the list. It's the list in green of if you could do one thing to improve Walpole, and it said where we got the feedback. And it looks like, you know, the public forum had a number of things, but a number of the things that I submitted from the public forum weren't marked off as public forum feedback on the list. So I would just ask, you know, we're all volunteers here, and we really are looking for your help to guide us through the process. So everybody makes mistakes, and maybe this wasn't a mistake, and you can take it offline and just let me know. I just want to make sure that, you know, the feedback that we're getting is getting rolled up correctly and that we're getting all the right results, because there's not a lot of time for omissions or mistakes. And we don't, collectively as a group, I mean, we're volunteers on this. We don't have the time to do this. I look to you guys to help us with this process.
I'll take a look at that and see. I'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, because the boxes have moved around on the screen, I'm no longer able to know who hasn't responded to this question. I'm sorry. Because I was trying to do this to mix it up. So has anyone not responded to this question? I thought, okay, so good. So, two more questions. What issues do you think the plan should absolutely cover? And let's start with Patrick.
Absolutely cover. Now, for me, transportation is always kind of pivotal. The town itself has, I think, great opportunities being, with 1A and Route 1 going through it. And I'm interested to see just regionally how those commercial corridors kind of expand and what we can do through zoning to kind of really highlight those assets. So that's just for me. I think that's kind of a good opportunity for future growth in those areas in particular. There's a lot. It's hard to say. There's a lot of great things that both the town has with their open space and recreation. Obviously, housing is in general in our country, our state, everything right now is a pivotal thing. So, that's kind of clear as day to me as well. So, but I guess, offhand, I'm always interested in commercial corridors and how to kind of, really kind of make something out of those. So.
Thank you. Glenn.
Yes, Patrick nailed a number of the issues. I think transportation is a core one. I mentioned a few in my first comments about land use and zoning, obviously open space and recreation. I did want to make a comment about the 2004 master plan. So a long time ago, 18 years ago, I had read a line in there that we said, or whoever produced that plan said that there's very little room for development in Walpole. We've almost developed most of the developable areas, and that line clearly proved to not be true. That there's plenty of room for development in Walpole, and now it's easy for us to look at it and say, yeah, we've developed most of most of the available public, privately owned land has been developed. Even if that's true, trust me, developers will tear down houses and they'll go downtown and build 6-story buildings, and they'll find a way to develop. So it wasn't true in 2004. It's not true today, and so I just think we need to be wary or aware of developers, and we want to help control and direct where and how they develop, so that it's what the town, so we get what we want at the end of the day.
Katie.
So, on this one, I looked at 81D because it clearly states 9 elements that should be addressed. And I honestly think they're sort of right on the money because they cover a lot of what we heard when we asked. I think what I heard from a lot of people is downtown, filling the shops, walkability, open space in general, not just, throughout the whole town. But I think a lot of people were concerned with downtown and how it's changed. I think to Janet's comment earlier, we heard a lot of people say, whether it was at the kitchen conversations or at the public meeting, we heard people say they want the old New England feel. So those are things that I hope are absolutely covered, but I think that we're, as long as we follow the guidelines and hit those 9 points, we're going to be just fine because we'll cover it all.
Thank you. John, what do you think this master plan should absolutely cover? The issues?
Well, I guess I disagree with a couple of previous statements. I think Andrew made it that this is all positive and all flowery and futuristic about all the Walpole's perfect and how can we even make it better. I think if you don't look at the roots of issues and of opportunities that haven't been fulfilled, that you're never going to achieve those opportunities. You talk about downtown redevelopment. Mike McGrath and Donnell, which I guess who isn't here tonight, they would remember that in the Economic Development Commission, for example, we went to the state and got additional liquor licenses to stimulate development in downtown Walpole with more restaurants and more venues to get people thinking about downtown and enhancing the opportunity for more stores and businesses and restaurants. And that really didn't come to fruition. And unless we face up to that, look at these things and find out why not, what's the underpinning problem? And again, I guess I have a theme here, but the theme is that, government, we have, excessive government regulation in town, which has not been economically productive, it hasn't been business friendly, and hasn't been helpful to the tax base. I know that, I'm an expert on it. I've been involved in it for 50 years, had 25 years on the Capital Budget Committee, and over 22 years on the Economic Development Commission, so I say that as an expert, not as a critic. And unless we're willing to address this kind of a need,
So are
you
you
can
saying,
get
John,
all the goals we want,
what the master
we're
plan
not gonna.
should cover is how to become more business friendly? Is that
Exactly. Well, this is something that should be included, how to address the regulatory issues, how to address the
That's definitely
concerns of
within
why
the scope.
businesses
That's
come
definitely
here.
within the scope, John. So how to become more business friendly. Thank you. Mike.
So I think I put this in my survey, but I think that the two things that I would see, I think it's revitalizing the downtown and then reuse of the properties that we have right now. We don't need any more abandoned buildings, especially with the schools coming around. We're going to end up with potentially another building that we have to figure out what to do with. So those are the two that I had. But again, I just want to put it on the record. That's just my idea out of everybody in town. It's not, that's not what's driving me in this process. So.
And I appreciate you saying that, but this is an opportunity for you to say what you care about, because most of the rest of the time it will be trying to understand what others care about.
Understood. Thank you.
Could I chime in on that for a second? Because Mike, you reminded me of something. There was a committee appointed. They studied for like 2.5 years for the reuse of the old town hall. And the chairman came to the town meeting twice to present a report, and he was stifled, and he was intentionally, they called for an adjournment of the meeting so the town meeting could not hear the presentation from his committee on the reuse. And this is bad politics. I'm sorry, but there's certain things wrong that unless those get addressed, you can have all the visions in the world, but you're not going on anywhere, with until we get our local government right.
Thank you. Janet.
Okay. I think as I tried to figure out what I thought was most important, I remembered when I first came to Walpole, quite a few years ago. And one of the things that impressed me was that I was moving out of the city of Boston to Walpole. I did not grow up in Boston, but I spent my early married years in Boston. I wanted my kids to have area to play. And I was impressed with many of the neighborhoods because they could play in the street. They could get together with kids, and I would feel safe, that they were safe. So I think the housing, we were able to skim through, and of course the price of the houses back then, which was like more than 45 years ago, was a lot different than it is now. So we, with a growing family of 3 already on here and one on the way, came out here, struggled for a bit, but we loved the fact that my kids could play outdoors. And not only that, but we were also able to have elderly people live nearby, and they could afford it. So I think the open space, especially the park areas now, that's a plus for me and an important fact for me and for my kids and grandkids that live in the town, and the affordability of not for elderly, but for families to come in and be able to live in a nice house that your kids can grow up in. You can go to school, you can play things. So for both my husband and I were in education. We could not afford half the stuff that you have to pay for in Walpole now. So I'd like to see open spaces still available and housing available.
And you also mentioned safety. You also mentioned safety.
Yeah, and safety.
Thank
that
you.
That goes with open space.
Could I I know you're all anxious to leave. Could I piggyback on her comment? Though it falls right into my lap here. We had a
Please,
meeting.
we have a couple more. Go ahead.
Finance committee last night, and we're presenting the water. The town administrator is presenting an 18% rate increase on water, which me as a commissioners are not going to accept. But we have to work around the growing government expenses. But at the same meeting, the conservation agent was there, and Phil, she's proposing a.
No, we can't hear you, John. We can't hear you, John. You're on mute. So I'm going to move to Andrew, and we'll come back to you, John, because we can't hear you.
I think
Andrew?
he's frozen.
No, he's on mute.
I don't think he's on
what's wrong
mute.
with town government. You know, it's obtrusive, and that, you know, it's a problem that's got to be corrected.
Thank you. Andrew, what do you feel should absolutely be covered in this plan?
Zoning changes need to absolutely be covered in the master plan. And several others who don't always agree with me have said it, but they're right, and John is one of them. Walpole is overly zoned, and restrictive zoning limits housing choices, and limited housing choices, it hurts economic job growth. And when we have that limitation from that red tape, that lack of economic growth really is preventing us from relieving tax burdens in town. So, for example, when I talked about workforce housing earlier, I know the Barrett Planning Group is not fond of that term, but however you want to articulate the idea that housing choices in a community should reflect the job composition of the labor market in the area. That's key if we're going to be able to limit tax growth. So the one thing I would say absolutely should be in the master plan is a compromise on zoning changes. You know, I put inclusionary zoning aside. I'm fine to compromise and put that out. Put a housing trust aside. I'm fine to compromise and keep that out. But what we need is zoning changes that facilitate the development of what I call the missing middle housing. This is where John and I agree. I'm talking about missing middle housing. That's 2 to 6 unit developments. That if we allowed, you know, less restrictive zoning rules, we could both add housing choices, add housing options, but we'd also address affordability concerns, and 2 to 6 unit developments would be in keeping with the character of Walpole. And that's what I want to be in the plan.
So Andrew, that's a very good point in that some states require that as soon as the master plan is complete, you go right to the zoning and you change it to support what the goals of the master plan. That's now in legislation here, but it's not quite passed. We always recommend, as soon as the master plan is complete, one of the main recommendations is that zoning is the tool, a major tool for land use, right? So you have to review and revise it, remove any barriers to meeting the goals that the master plan sets out, and actually use zoning to encourage the goals of the master plan. So that would be a really critical piece.
Yeah, he's right on target. When somebody applies for something, even one unit, you bring 15 to 25 sets of plans, which are the sets are 20, 30 pages. You bring wheelbarrows of plans to Patrick's office. In fact, go up to Patrick's office and look. You got to wade through the plans to get to his desk. And they go to, you know, fire department, police department, health board, zoning board, building department, engineering department, water department.
Some things
It's
have to
crazy.
be permitted, right, to be for health and safety, but streamlining the process is definitely always a concern. So Phil, I believe you haven't told us what you would absolutely like to do.
Yes, and first I just want to mention to John's point, you know, right now there's a work going on within the town to make the planning board supporting the inspectional services, to make the filing of plans electronic, so everyone doesn't have to file all that paper. It would make the process a lot more efficient. So that's in the works, and look for more of that. Certainly when we have the planning board meetings, we want to have all that information online so people can just get to it, as well as planning board members themselves. So I want to second Andrew on the zoning. I think that we absolutely need to address the housing. We know that people would like to keep Walpole in its small town look. We need to do those together, and that's where zoning comes in. Put housing where it makes sense. We have new laws passed at the state level, so the housing choice, all of the options for smart zoning, we should be looking to do that. That also supports our issues over sustainability and climate crisis. Having housing more around points of transportation. We are an MBTA community, so we're very fortunate to have that. So that's an opportunity. So definitely housing and having more affordable housing. So making dense housing where it makes sense. I think that really would help it. It's a lot of the issues that other people have spoke about. John has spoke about, as Andrew said. I also things that the town, the plan should absolutely cover sustainability and open space and facilities. I think facilities is big because we need to look out long term. We talk about building new buildings or changing our facilities. So this is the opportunity to do that and do it really right, so that we phase new buildings or new facilities in when they're needed, and also we spread them out over years. Sustainability is incredibly important for all the obvious reasons, and this is again an opportunity for us to take the lead on that. And there's state money to be had if we do the right planning. We can apply for things like we saw with the becoming a green communities. So zoning and managing growth and just being very smart about it and still keeping. I think this is the trade-off and the tension, but I think we can do smart growth, do affordable housing, do more housing, at the same time keeping the character of town as people would like it.
Thank you. So I would venture to say that the two main themes were, one, ensuring that the outreach is comprehensive and that people's voices are reflected in the plan, and two, that the plan be long range. So in terms of thinking about it being long range, what would you say are some trends, whether they be local, regional, national, international, that the plan should be sure to capture and use as an opportunity? Any trends?
And who are you starting with?
Would you like to start?
Oh, no, I didn't know what name you had said.
Andrew would like to start.
Okay, okay, go ahead. I didn't mind starting, but go ahead, Andrew.
I wish I hope we get to meet again in person sometime soon, because I enjoy your company, and I think it's important for us to get to know each other more. And so if you don't know, my job, I'm a labor economist for a company that works with large enterprises and helps them hire through job ads. And one of the big trends we find in our industry across the US, we operate in the US, the UK, and Germany, is the concentration of business activity because of the COVID pandemic has shifted. The industry mix has shifted. How people work, particularly the reduced stigma of work from home, has shifted the commercial real estate sector tremendously. And so when we think about the Seaport and Google having offices and people taking the commuter rail into the financial district of Boston, that's really expensive per square foot real estate. There's an enormous opportunity here for Walpole to position itself as a community that, yes, it has great schools and transit access and open spaces and a small town feel, but it can also be an economic development engine for commercial tax bases. If we recognize this shift in the work from home that is driving commercial real estate away from dense urban areas. So that's my one big trend. My second big trend is the aging population. And so, the baby boomer generation is retiring, and their kids, millennials like me, are having fewer kids. And they also prefer different types of more walkable neighborhoods. And this is shifting, the aging population is shifting the demand for services. Like, obviously we need them. It's critical that we got the Council on Aging, the South Street Center. But I think we haven't fully wrapped our heads around the ramifications of how Walpole is going to age over the next 20 years and how that impacts our tax base, both in terms of seniors who are, living on fixed incomes, who are house rich but income poor, but also in terms of how it's excluding your engine of development, your real property taxpayers, people who are trying to buy in if there's not housing options. So I think that's the second big trend here is changes in demographics. So those are my two cents.
Thank you. Phil?
And I would add sustainability to that as well, that we need to be proactive to seeing how we support. One thing is at the state level, we have the Global Solutions Warming Act. We have the Next Generation Roadmap for Mass Climate Policy. Those are places where we as Walpole can do things that help the sustainability of our own town, whether it be flooding or storms, but also doing our part to reduce our carbon emissions. And the state has some very, very aggressive goals in doing that. And it's in our interest in doing that, partly certainly because it's for the good of the society, for the state, but also there will be more funds given for towns who are figuring out how to do that, because the federal government is going to be funding programs. And then transportation and housing are the two other big ones for me. Looking at how people did mention a lot about making a walkable community, taking advantage of we do have the train station, we have the bus routes, and that really fits in really well with making more, as Andrew said, more range of housing. And then promoting industry. If we have more people living downtown, then more of the people will open up businesses downtown. You can't get businesses if you don't have people living there. I think it's been a good direction. I know some people felt those two big apartment buildings were too large for Walpole. I make no judgment on that, other than to say they add a lot of people downtown, maybe where you want them, and that can only be good, I think, for downtown businesses. And going forward, we just need to be smart on how we do our zoning to ensure that we do the kind of housing where we want it, but also that allows Walpole to grow and offer more housing. And as Andrew said, the type of housing we need. And I just want to say, some people might think that I'm one of those baby boomers. I don't know. No, I'm only joking. I'm not really quite there yet, but really maybe I am. Anyways.
So Pat, what trends do you see?
Well, if I could just play back what Andrew and Phil said, I think that'd be my response. But seriously, I mean, trends in housing, I think are trying to keep up with the trends regionally within housing, and what other communities are doing to try to facilitate the creation of new housing. I mean, that's kind of the big that's the big topic. Any meeting I go to now, like regionally with planners, anything like that, all we're talking about and fixated on is how to facilitate the creation of more housing. And not so much just affordable housing, but, like Andrew said, workforce housing for people that are squarely in the middle class. I mean, any means to make changes within our zoning, to do so and kind of learn from what the successes of what of our neighbors have done, or look for examples elsewhere in the state or in the country of where that's been able to be utilized for success. I mean, that's going to be a trend that I think most communities around here are going to be looking towards. So that's it.
Thank you. Janet, do you see any trends that you think? Oh, Andrew wants to respond. Sorry. No,
you had to go.
Yeah.
I was actually just going to say I like the idea that we could become a center for some of the tech businesses that are moving out of the city. Route 1 has a lot of areas still open for that. I think that's exciting to think about. I know my kids love working from home and hating getting back on the T to go in town. So my kids are not here. They're in Walpole, but they're not at home. I am. And I also think that we have to be aware of the concerns for climate, not necessarily worried about the direction, because I think you'll find arguments on both sides of where we're heading with the climate. But I think it's when you go to the cheapest gas station you can find, we're pretty much aware that we've got to cut back on our use of oils and gases. And I think we also have to be very aware of the demographics of Walpole. If we see it as an aging population, I think we ought to do something to change that. I'm not suggesting anything drastic, just like perhaps we should encourage more young families to come out here and enjoy the wonderful town that I was really very happy and I'm still happy living in with my family growing up and watching them grow and flourish in our school systems. And so I think that's a concern that I have. Is the demographic too split? Is it becoming untenable for maintaining the kind of life that we were able to enjoy, and I'd like everybody else to as well. That's about all I can say.
Meg, any trends?
Oh, and I'm off mute. Yeah, and I also didn't get to answer the previous question.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But no, and they kind of go together a little bit. But I just want to make sure that we pay a lot of attention to sustainability, which is something that Philip mentioned. I don't want to let that go by the wayside. And just to reiterate what Andrew was talking about, zoning, and allowing that to help us with housing and downtown. And I'm thinking of just a basic thing by opening up, allowing apartments. Like, right now there's in-laws, but you can't really have a kitchen or things like that. Like, come on, just have a little rental in your house. That's easy things. But in terms of trends, I think that we really need to step up to the plate with sustainability and get with the program there. That's
you. 80.
So I think everyone had really good points. I think what I've seen over the past several years is when trends are mentioned and studies are cited, they're always cities or urban. They don't do small town studies so much. I think to Janet's point, and I can use my mother as an example too, a lot of people that live here, whether they be in their age group or whether they be in my age group, moved here from the city. They moved here because they saw what Walpole had to offer and they liked it. They liked that they could still get to the city pretty easily. And I think it's important that we look at, I know housing is an issue right now everywhere, but if you look at realtor.com, there's nothing to buy in Walpole. If you compare it to a lot of other towns, there is nothing to buy in Walpole. And I think that speaks to it. Something comes up and it's gone. And that was before it got to the point it is right now. It's been like that for a while. So I think that Walpole is a sought after community. And I think we have to, rather than worry about, national trends or, what's going on in the cities, I think we do have to be mindful of that. But I think we have to look at why people chose to live here, because they chose to be here. And what they like and what they want to continue. So I think that's important, that we not just look at studies and try and follow a trend. I think it's really important that we keep our identity and that we satisfy those people who chose to live here and want to be here.
Thank you. Mike.
Sorry, I'm not on mute. So I think everything's been said. I think just a couple of things that I would want to build on. Andrew said it earlier, and the way that I would say it, I think this is what people were saying, but for folks like teachers or public servants and the folks that work for the town, they're priced out of living in the town that they work in, and I think those are the things. Or kids that grow up here are forced to move out of town because they can't stay in town. I think those are the opportunities that we need to, address and I think that's that middle class. But it's certainly folks that are in the community already. We don't want them to leave and live someplace else. We want them to be able to live here and be able to afford it. So that's the first thing. I think healthcare was something, I don't know if it got brought up, but I think There was a lot of talk during one of my meetings around, well, you know, Nord Hospital, it's being rebuilt, but it's been closed for a long time. During COVID, the urgent cares were just exploded. We have Patriot Place, but we don't have a lot of stuff in Walpole specifically to address a healthcare crisis that might arise, and that could be addressed. Additionally, it doesn't have to be hospitals and stuff, but it could be, you know, just more healthy options, more places for people to walk, and healthy places for people to eat, and, you know, that kind of stuff. So just healthcare overall is a trend. Sustainability is a really huge bucket. So I think there's sustainability in our building reuse and the power that we use. It's a big bucket. So we have to. I wouldn't go into our master plan saying we want to be sustainable. We have to have very concrete examples of how we're going to do that. Yeah. And that's all. And I'm not an expert on any of those things, but just high level thoughts.
Thank you. John, any trends that you want to highlight?
Yeah, actually, yes. Believe it or not, over the last 4 or 5 years, our per capita consumption of water has declined. We have a marginally inclining growth curve of population. We have a declining curve of water consumption. It might not seem like a problem, but the water is based on a fixed cost system, so that as the gross amount of water being used goes down, the price of water for the households goes up, and we have a bit of a emergency in the sense that we arbitrarily kept water increases low during COVID as a humanitarian effort for people who were displaced, out of work, or were shut in, etc. But this is Glenn and I will deal with some of this. I send in some information. I hope to coordinate with Glenn on the utilities and on sewer and water. It's an important component of this plan. We do have master plans. We have a lot of good planning information, but I think we have to get the issues feathered into this master plan. And the concern is that we have got to
Can't hear you, John. Sorry, John, we can't hear you. John.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just have to interrupt. I see that we don't have a quorum anymore. Okay. Andrew had to leave, so we're going to have to end the meeting without a quorum. So just to show that at 7:29, Andrew left. So.
So anyway, let me finish though. So that one of the issues that may come up is the fact that we may want to be going into a long-term migration toward a supplemental membership of the MWA, because that will become a variable cost water system going into the next 20, 30, 50 years. We'll never run out of water. We'll have access to the best water in the world, or in the country at least, and we won't have the problem of dealing with forever contaminants on our own. We'll be sharing it with another 50 communities. So that might be a very big change. It's not an instant change, it's a small incremental change, but it starts like an insurance policy, and it may evolve into a regular or joint MWR membership with our current water system. So that's an important trend, because without water, we don't have a community. So
John, when you receive the inventory, which I should tell you, you will be receiving by Friday, March 18th, and then you will have 1 month to review it, comments back by the 15th of April. Please be sure to identify in that inventory what the existing conditions are regarding the water and the procedure, and then be sure to identify this as a potential future.
Yeah, right, what the remedies are. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Daphne, so I'm going to end the meeting because we don't have a quorum. So we shouldn't really go on. I want to thank you for, I think has been a very productive and very, very fruitful session. I think we really got a lot of good thoughts, a lot of good input, and really gave each of us a chance to have give our own vision and our own thoughts on this. So I want to thank you for that.
I want to thank you, Phil, for providing everyone with this opportunity. And again, I'm really impressed with everyone's answers and civility. I really mean that.
So we will follow up on the other agenda items, how we handle that, separate from this meeting, because we do need to adjourn. So I want to thank again, Daphne. I want to thank Patrick, as always, for being supporting us, and also want to thank Walpole Media TV for filming and broadcasting our meetings. So with that,
Well, just want
Move to adjourn.
I was going to say, so as everyone knows, the inventory and assessment information is still not available yet. I'll make sure to let the group know as soon as that information is made available.
Thank you.
So Pat, it will be made available. It will be submitted to you on Friday, March 18th.
and then all the schedules will change accordingly. We'll figure that out.
Comments would be expected back by the 15th of April.
April,
So
okay.
okay. 1 month.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you.
We're not taking that away from you. Just
Yeah, thank you. So again, thank you everyone. Thank you, Daphne, and I wish everybody a good night.
Good night.
Good night.